Start the clock.
Don't you watch the show? Why are national polls irrelevant to the gun control debate? I guess that's for you. I'm national polls, meaning that 90% of the people wanted background checks and we didn't get it done.
Well, that number's not necessarily true, but let's suppose it were, for the sake of argument.
What's not true?
The 90% figure is widely disputed.
Really?
Yeah.
I have not heard that so far.
A bunch of polls afterwards that showed that it's partly because there's a difference between how much people care. And so if you ask them, are they in favor of background checks, and then you tell them what that background check would mean, you get different answers. But let's presume it were true, just for the sake of argument. They're not.
But it's a majority. It's over 50%.
Right. They're certainly not irrelevant to the national debate. They're by no means irrelevant. But they do have to be set within the American context, which is that you're dealing with a right which is enumerated in the Constitution. So, for example, 90% of people wanted flag burning, but, they can't get that. If you asked a majority, you'd have a national religion here, probably, a state religion.
No. We just did that. It was 33%, 34%.
Oh, did you? Okay, well, that's good.
34% want a national religion, yes.
Okay. Well,
but there's always that one-third. You cannot march them into the 19th century no matter how hard you try.
Right, and that's good news that it's so low.
It's good news?
It's good news that it's so low. It's not a majority. But my point is, if you'd found 90% in that poll, it wouldn't have been irrelevant, but it would have been irrelevant to what the American government did about it, because you have the Senate. And I know I watched you a couple of weeks ago, and I know your feelings on the Senate, but the Senate exists very deliberately to be the state's representation. So once you filter these numbers through the Senate, through the Constitution, it fills a role in determining what the President might make a priority and what the House should make a priority, but that's not how American government works. It's not supposed to work like that.
Well, you say that because that's what we have now, but that was not always the case. The Senate was a compromise. Madison, who pretty much wrote the Constitution, he didn't want a Senate. He didn't think that was a good idea, that states with no people had the same amount of representation as states with a lot of people. I mean, California has 36 million people. We get the same representation as Wyoming, which has 4.
Right. But California...
That was a compromise.
No, I understand it was a compromise. I think it was a good one. I mean, I'm happy to respect that you don't like it, but it is nonetheless the law of the land, and I think it works very well because Wyoming and California are very different states. And if California wishes to change its gun laws, if New York wishes to change its gun laws, that's great. But they wouldn't necessarily work in Utah or Idaho or Wyoming. Why do it nationally? Why not do it locally?
What do you mean they wouldn't work?
Well, it doesn't make sense in Utah, for example, where there's almost no gun murders at all, to impose the same sort of laws that you would need in a city like New York.
Well, so you're saying all the gun laws should be by state? This kind of reminds me during the health care debate when people like Nikki Haley was the one in South Carolina says, well, what's right for South Carolina's health laws might not be right for New York. Really? People don't get gallbladder cancer in South Carolina? What sort of nonsense is that? People have the same bodies, the same health issues, every state. That's ridiculous.
Well,
okay. All right, we'll move on. Mark Bittman, with global warming colliding with food production around the world, I'm not sure what that means. Okay, why are you against genetically modified foods, i.e. developing crops that are drought tolerant? Okay, that would help out farmers and their livestock.
That's good 4 questions at once. But
right.
The way to deal with global warming is to reduce industrial meat production because it's responsible for something between 20 and 50% of greenhouse generating gases. So GMOs are not the answer here by any means.
No, and again, Monsanto, evil. Evil.
It's been that way for a long time, actually.
I know.
I think we're talking 40 or 50 years of evilness.
Yes,
with Monsanto.
and Obama, a big disappointment on confronting Monsanto.
Well, yes, but, I mean, what
I know he's got a lot on his plate
about food and GMOs and labeling and all of that stuff, what they say and what's happened, there's been a huge differential, and between what they say and what needs to happen is even a bigger differential. But this goes for many things.
Okay. Zachary, is prosecution the best way to address social media bullying?
That's you, isn't it? No, probably not. I mean, prosecution for people who've committed crimes makes sense to me, and bullying is a whole separate issue. And technology is a whole separate issue on top of that, and social media and interconnectivity and this world that we live in, which is supposedly so much more immediate, and we all have so much more access to each other, and we're so much more intertwined, but the reality is we've never been more fractured. And the way to stop bullying in any form is to connect with your children and teach them how to be responsible, respectful contributors to society and hold them accountable to that.
Torture is quite different than not having your rights read. There's a difference. I mean, I'm not supporting one way or the other. What I am saying is this is not extrajudicial. There's a Supreme Court precedent for this, and I think that torture is a different thing. Your rights are there. I think there's a legitimate issue as to, and I happen to believe, as a former police officer, that you should read people their rights. However, there's a difference between not being read your rights and having them and being tortured.
Yeah, but you think he's going to message out to the world? I mean, to Putin, to China, when we make these kinds of exceptions. I remember Chinese officials telling me when I was complaining about their abuse of or taking shortcuts. If you faced our problems, then you would do the same thing. And I was, saying, we would never do that. And then 9/11 happened, and then I kind of felt I needed to.
We didn't need to make exceptions to defeat the Nazis or the Soviet Union.
But that's not true. The Kirin case in the 1940s, Korematsu, we locked up Japanese Americans. We took enemy combatants.
Yeah, that's true.
We took enemy combatants without a civilian trial, tried 6 of them out of 8, and we executed them. That was Roosevelt, a Democrat.
And that was a source of not of national strength, but of national weakness, I think.
But I don't think it's fair to say that questioning a suspect is the equivalent of torturing them. We question them in the court, and we try to build a case against them. They get questioned in court, they get questioned by police. That's not torture, that's investigation.
No, but to question them without their Miranda rights, does that mean they're getting cups of tea and being treated in a civil way, or not?
I don't know.
What would you bet? What would you bet?
Really nice.
What would
Maybe a glass of water and you can get the DNA.
Well, but we did see in the paper this week there was a think tank that issued a report on Bush's torture, and it was rather more pervasive than we thought, even, and we thought it was pretty bad, and it was coming from on high. And
including Republicans.
Asa Hutchinson was on the committee, so it was not lacking by partisanship. And I just think that is a black mark on our record, and it always will be. And obviously all the arguments have been made that when our guys get captured, there's nothing to prevent other people from torturing them and saying America does it too.
Yeah, it makes it harder to make a case. Speaking of something, I work with the writers' organization, PEN, and the thing is, if you go and talk about what's being done to people in other countries, and try and persuade that to stop, well, they'll say, well, what are you doing? What about what's happening in Guantanamo Bay? What's happening here? How can you make a claim about what we should do when you're doing the same thing? So okay. it weakens the case.
Colin, somebody asked, do you think social media contributes to isolation, lack of empathy, and makes people less sensitive to the suffering of others?
Good question. I think there's a sense of coolness in the sense that I can want to go play a game with somebody from France and Argentina and Japan all at the same time, but at the same time, how I'm doing that is, staring at a screen. I'm not actually looking at someone's face. Instead of going outside and knocking on some door and engaging with another human being, I'm sitting in a room by myself staring at a screen. I mean, if you ever try to communicate with someone via email or text, and you lose so much of that context, you lose so much of what you're trying to say, that I think it does.
It's hard for someone of my generation to relate to that. When the Manti Te'o case surfaced, it was very. I couldn't understand it. How you can have a girlfriend that you've never met. I know what it's like to not to have a girlfriend. I remember those days, but I didn't think the long past, and I didn't think I had one. I had my hand. I knew, but I wasn't fooling myself that my hand was named Lily.
But I would like to
it was named Lily, but I wasn't fooling myself.
But I would like to point out that this question is being asked by someone who is watching us online as we speak.
Yes, that's right. We're online now.
That's getting creepy.
And do follow us on Twitter.
Very true. Okay, Amy Weisenheimer, then let's get the next question to you. As an economics graduate, what system would you prefer the government implement to make corporations pay for externalities such as carbon emissions?
What would I advocate for that? Well, I don't necessarily advocate corporations paying for externalities like carbon emissions.
Really?
Really? But I don't want to
Really,
go down
they
that road.
should be-
We've been down this road before, Bill, and it ends badly.
Right. Global warming's a hoax. I remember.
Yes.
I forgot.
Global warming is a hoax, according to today's Republicans, foisted on us by MoveOn.org. You know, radical liberal organizations have made up global warming in order to oppress us.
You're exactly right. Yeah.
I thought it was out.
No, my dad was in the oil business. Yeah, but they're never upfront with us, ever, about anything. And I don't know why we just don't learn that lesson about these oil. It's as simple as that to me.
Okay. Michael, why is Bradley Manning not seen as a hero like Daniel Ellsberg was with Watergate? Well, I think a lot of people do think.
Well, I think he is a hero.
Yeah,
if I were president, I'd have Cheney and Bush and Wolfowitz all arrested, and they'd be tried for lying to the American people. I can't think of a worse lie to tell than to take a country to war. Is there really a worse lie that a politician can tell than to take people to war and have thousands, hundreds of thousands killed? And the fact that Bradley Manning is going to serve life in prison or be executed because all he wanted to do was tell us how we were being lied to. This is disgraceful, and historians 100 years from now, if we're still here, are not going to look kindly upon this.
Is there anything you think is off limits to put up on the internet for everyone to read? Anything in the government that shouldn't be put out for public?
Anything in the government? No, nothing.
Nothing?
No.
What about, you don't want to out CIA agents, do you?
Well, it's actually a good question, because I've been told since Benghazi last fall that was a consulate or an embassy. And now we learn it's a CIA station. Yeah, it's part of the Black Ops thing.
Well, I mean, Chris Stevens wasn't part of it.
No, not him, but the reason
certainly it was
why people in the neighborhood might have been upset. If Saudi Arabia invaded us tomorrow and suddenly somehow was able to take over, and they had a consulate station down on Pico and Fairfax, who here might not consider paying them a visit? I'm not saying it's right. I'm just saying I know your whole thing with people and Muslims and Islam and all this, but one
my whole thing.
No, you just
my whole thing is about people's beliefs, not that they're Muslims. Right. If they believe something inimical, like if you hear someone, as I've heard congressmen say, that they believe we don't have to worry about global warming because in the Bible God promised Noah he wouldn't try to wipe out the earth, as a congressman said, you would say that belief is harmful. When I hear someone say their belief is that if you leave the religion, we could kill you, that's not prejudice on my part.
No.
I'm not the bad guy.
I'm not Glenn Greenwald. I'm
right.
I seriously, I understand. That's why you usually win the argument, because you're right. We can do the Book of Mormon, and Trey and Matt are not going to be killed.
Right.
I get that.
But we can't do the Book of Islam.
But my point with Muslims is that they don't want to take over America. They don't want to invade us. No. They just want us to fuck out of there.
I agree.
And leave them alone and let them work it out. And eventually, the oppressed in those countries will be free.
That was where I was.
Happened.
Yeah. That's where I was going with that question.
Please, Richard, jump in.
No, about energy independence. We are soon going to be energy independent in this country.
No, we'll be energy self-sufficient.
Well, yeah, we don't need to get it from the Middle East anymore. And when we do, I don't see any reason why we need troops all over the world.
We'll be energy self.
Sorry. Go ahead.
We'll be energy self-sufficient. We won't be independent of the repercussions of Middle Eastern oil being interrupted. All of our economic partners. We have other interests in the Middle East. We've got interests from our relationship with Israel to the fact of nuclear proliferation to the fact of terrorists. We've got real interests in the Middle East. I don't think it should dominate U.S. foreign policy, but there are reasons not to simply walk away from it.
Okay. Andrew Ross Sorkin, are banks still too big to fail? He wrote the book, which was the great movie on HBO, Too Big to Fail. Now, we are in a more precarious situation than we were in 2008.
Okay, good and bad news. The banks are still too big to fail. That's the bad news.
Right.
Good news is I don't think they're going to fail anytime soon.
Oh, great.
But they will again at some point. Unfortunately,
wow.
No, unfortunately,
I'm supposed to feel good about that.
Unfortunately, the economy is still so lousy. We talked about unemployment and all these other issues. There's not enough debt and leverage in the system. That's what took us sort of over the cliff last time. it will happen again. It might happen in 5 or 10 years or longer, but for right now, you can kind of.
What's the date?
You can kind of chill out.
What's the date?
But I worry about the size of them. But I don't just worry about the size of our banks. Today, I worry about the municipalities, the countries, the states. Too big to fail. We talked about it when I wrote the book about banking. Now it's about everything, and I think that's what we need to worry about.
Areas. You can only come to.
Also, people only want to be with people that they're comfortable around. So unless we give them incentives to think differently about that, and we live more and more now in tribes and in small communities with people just like us. So if we don't do things to urge us to be in contact with one another, we're just going to continue cycles.
Yeah, that said, I think, we'll know the big idea of America is to form a more perfect union, and we'll know we've succeeded when it's time to move from affirmative action based on race to affirmative action based on class, because that really is a larger issue.
We're kind of there.
Well,
yeah.
We're moving to
but it's not just race. I mean, it's GLBT rights. It's women's rights. LGBT.
You said GLBT and it threw everyone off.
It just threw me. It's all the same. It's all the same.
Very self-centered of you, by the way.
Well, because I'm gay.
To put yourself first. Yeah,
well,
GLBT.
I try.
You're gay?
I'm gay. Yeah.
Now you tell me when the show's on.
Why did you want to ask me out on
No,
No,
I wouldn't do that on the air.
A little footsie under the table.
Yeah, but what I was going to say is, when you look at statistics like household wealth or something, I mean, like black Americans have 11 cents on the dollar.
Yeah, but it's not
some ridiculous statistic. I'm probably getting that
it's
wrong.
It's income, it's education, it's health disparities. I mean, you go on down the list. Brown people, unfortunately, disproportionately are worse off than white people. I mean, there's no question about it. When you take a look at the statistics, we still have a long way to go.
We do.
And here's why. It's because even though affirmative action is on the books, even though thus in the process it is enforced, it's still not enforced from a race-based standpoint. There are still a lot of people out there, unfortunately, that don't like me just because of the color of my skin. And thus in the process, they have preconceived notions about me and think that perhaps maybe I can't speak proper English. Or perhaps maybe I don't have the strong, I'm telling you, this is what the statistics say. And perhaps maybe I don't have a strong work ethic as you do. Perhaps maybe I'm driving down Beverly Hills and I'm in a nice car and I'll get pulled over by doing 23 miles instead of 25 miles. Just simply
Perhaps producers don't think I can garner an audience to the extent that a white person can. So, I mean, we know that we still live with these things.
You're not white?
We know that
Look how politically incorrect you get when you come here.
I'm sorry.
You would never have asked that on your own show, Jimmy, right?
I would have.
When I say I mean we.
Right.
Yeah.
You, me.
Right.
Me.
Not you.
Probably me.
Us. The three of us. The three amigos.
But anyway, as I was trying to say, if you look at just statistics and you see African Americans behind in some of these economic factors, you can either say one of two things. They're behind because they're not smart enough.
Some people do say.
Or because there is a legacy. And you have to, and unless you want to say they're just not smart enough, the answer has to be there's a legacy, and that has to lead you to the conclusion we still need affirmative action. That's what I would say.
I just want to.
I agree.
Robert, if conservatives on the Supreme Court overturn, affirmative action, I mean, you're a conservative, obviously, African American. Are you going to be offended? Are you going to feel that conservatives have undercut you?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Just checking.
All right. What does the anti-science crowd say scientists are wrong about global warming and environment, but are happy to trust them with drugs, space exploration, etc.? I don't know what that is.
No idea.
Let's go back to Jimmy. Having interviewed so many celebrities and being a celebrity yourself,
thank you.
What are some negative aspects that come along with having fame? Yeah, Jimmy, what are some negative aspects for you?
Well, I mean, what do you do with all the money?
That's a
women throwing themselves at you. It gets tiring. There are some negative aspects, but I'd look like an asshole if I listed them. So,
go ahead. We're only on the internet.
Yeah. Well, it's no fun when you come stumbling out of a bar and there's a guy with a camera in your face asking you what you think about some random subject, and then you're really too drunk to not answer him.
I didn't know you partied like that. Really? You come stumbling out of a bar?
Oh, yes.
We have to talk. That's our show, ladies and gentlemen. I'm going to go talk with Jimmy Kimmel.
Here's a peek at what guests had to say.
Confirm that, but too many. I think when you have too many cats is when someone comes over to your house and within 3 seconds goes, "Jesus, did a giant cat piss on your house?"
How many cats do you have?
I have two. One is
two. Come on.
Well, one's on hiatus or eaten by coyotes. It's not clear to me.
Really? Oh.
It's horrible. It's
They
horrible.
run away, don't they?
Well, no, he didn't run away. He got taken, I think, or else he's living with a kind lady who's giving him nicer food. And if that's the case, I'm glad he's still alive. And if I find that woman, I'm taking my fucking cat back. I have two in the house. There's a couple of strays outside that I feed and some that come and go.
It is a terrible Hobson's choice, isn't it? Because if you keep the cats inside, that's a kind of a cruel fate. That's worse than Gitmo.
No, they like it. They're all right.
Just to be inside all the time?
No, they get used to it. They like it. He had to go outside because he peed on everything, and it was a tough choice to make. But one day you wake up and you go, "Holy shit, on me? He peed on me?" And then you got to make a decision.
But I mean, I think they're happier when they can roam around outside, but it's more dangerous. It's like being single versus being married.
Yes, when you're single, you can always get eaten by wild animals.
You certainly can, if you're lucky.
Yes.
Now, okay, at what age, I guess this is for everybody, at what age would you be comfortable with your child handling a gun? Well, we are childless.
Yeah, I am.
I've got a 3-year-old and an 8-month-old, so neither of them. But I would say, let me start there, Bill.
Really going out on a limb there, aren't you? I mean, you're going to piss off the
you gotta-
NRA if they hear that. I mean, guns out of the hands of 3-year-olds? Are you sure?
If you own a firearm, you'd better make sure your child knows how to handle it safely or understands why it's dangerous.
What age should you start them?
Well, when they're able to understand.
Firearm, you should have it locked up
Sure,
so that your
absolutely.
child can't ever get at it under any circumstance.
No, that's part of it too. Absolutely, Lawrence. But what if they're at a friend's house or something like that? I mean, they should understand and know
let me hear this.
how to handle
When
it.
they're at a friend's house?
What? I don't know.
Your gun's at home, and when they're at a friend's house,
What if they're at a friend's
they might
house
need
where they're
to
not
use
locked
the gun
up?
there?
No, what if their friend's parents' guns?
Yeah. Well, here's what you do with that. You don't play with those kids. With the unlocked guns in the house.
You don't always
Let me ask,
know.
you have guns unlocked?
You don't always know. I mean, you make a play date with
In
somebody.
Santa Monica, I have found that the parents in Santa Monica, they don't have their guns lying around.
Pretty safe bet when you're sending your kid in Santa Monica.
But you think that's something you should ask another parent? Oh, like, my little boy's coming over to play with yours. Do you have any guns lying around?
If you're
I
in a
guess
gun nut community,
that's
you better. Yeah.
Right, it's reasonable. They'd probably go, what?
Yeah. No, if you live in Cumberland County, Kentucky now, that should be your first question. Because that's where the 5-year-old shot the 2-year-old.
Right, okay. Maddie, in your opinion, should girls have unrestricted access to Plan B? That's the birth control, the over-the-counter birth control, right? Plan B, isn't that what they call it? Isn't that RU 486? Yes, I am. Or should there be an age limit? Well, this was in the news this week because the FDA said no, it should be available for 15 and older without any sort of parental permission.
We have our president who is talking to Planned Parenthood one day and then decides to appeal its decision, the next?
I didn't understand that either.
I mean, that's a very difficult
Right.
situation for people who, for them, is a voting issue. For me, it's not. So I don't really have an opinion that
Really?
I think is... I mean, I'm not a scientist. I know that that's kind of the Obama administration's...
I think if 5-year-olds can have guns, 15-year-olds can have birth control.
There's a sliding scale here on guns and birth control.
Yeah, I think it's...
But I know that the Obama administration's position is that there's scientific evidence for at what age it makes sense to give unlimited, not have limit to this kind of drug. I'm not sure that I buy it, but I'm not sure that I really care either. So.
Okay. Well,
we should try to arm the fetuses so that they can defend themselves. I mean, let's keep going down the line.
At least get them comfortable with firearms.
Let's make sure that the fetus is comfortable with a shotgun.
Pete, aside from new leadership at the VA, what is the most important step in creating an efficient system for veterans to apply for benefits? Because that's been in the news a lot.
Well, it has, and our organization was the first to come out and say that Secretary Shinseki should step down. Honorable man, he's been there for 4.5 years.
Really?
Hasn't gotten the job done.
You put it on him.
Well, it's not just on him. It's on a calcified bureaucracy that treats every vet like a number and tells you to wait in line for 2 years if you live in L.A. And we should do better than that. We can do better than that. And you know what? There are a lot of private sector companies that have figured these kind of processes out a lot quicker. So why don't we learn something from them so we can actually deliver services to
Because
veterans?
there's money involved. This is the United States of money. Of course, when money is involved, they can do it. They can't count the votes accurately either, but banks never make a mistake.
But there's very little incentive.
New rule, Us magazine must tell Pope Francis and Pope Benedict who wore it best. Then someone's got to tell these guys, hey, leave some room for the Holy Ghost. Girl, stop making food that tastes like other food. If you've ever said, I wish these potato chips tasted like Southern biscuits and gravy, has Lay's got a chip for you. It's like they strangled Paula Deen and stuffed her in the bag. But why stop there? Why not cheese that tastes like root beer? Or guacamole that tastes like the first girl you ever loved? Call me old-fashioned, but when I bite into a burrito, I want it to taste like what it's supposed to taste like. E. coli. Well, if we want foreigners to stop hating us, we have to stop making movies where Jason Bourne runs through their cities and knocks them down. You're not the spy who loved me, you're the asshole who made me pour curry down my pants. Maybe even you don't know your identity, but I'm pretty sure you're from New York. Neural, now that Bill Cosby's eye disease is so bad he's reported to be completely blind, he has to look on the bright side. So's your wife. Neural, the makers of the new wine for cats called Pinot Meow, which asks cat owners the question, why drink alone, have to understand something. This is infinitely more sad than drinking alone. Vietjet, the Vietnamese airline that has seen sales soar after dressing its flight attendants in bikinis, has to go all the way and rename itself Me So Horny Airlines. Me So Horny Airlines. We'll head for the clouds while you make it rain. Neural, you have to admit that Florida's Ed and Fran Gargulia, who have been married for 52 years and coordinating their outfits every day, are just adorable. The only thing that doesn't match is that Ed carries a wallet and Fran carries a purse, where she keeps Ed's ball. Neural, now that Tom Hanks has played a Navy captain, an Army captain, a container ship captain, and now an airline captain, let's just get it over with and go right to making Tom Hanks is Cap'n Crunch. Neural, the 21-year-old Australian man who was just bitten by a poisonous spider on his penis for the second time this year must be told that there are easier ways to get people to suck it.
Yes. Oh, I'm sorry. Wasn't that supportive? It was good.
Neural, the Taliban has to promote a more diverse workplace environment. This week, the Taliban named its new leader, and you guessed it, another heterosexual Muslim man. Well, we think heterosexual. It's hard to be sure when coming out of the closet gets you thrown off a roof. But come on, guys, isn't it time for a bearded lady? Neural, now that Stephen Hawking has called Trump a demagogue, Trump has to prove that one time he can just not respond. He's attacked prisoners of war and disabled reporters. Too late. R2-D2 Hawking is a terrible scientist. I love the universe. He has Lou Gehrig's disease, but none of its class. Thinks he's smart, but his law for constant surface gravity at the event horizon of black holes, very stupid. That was for you.
Oh, good. Thank you. I got
Fuck
that.
you.
I got it.
Why do you boo? What's the booing?
I didn't boo.
No, them. Why is everybody so sensitive? Neural, someone has to cheer up the good people of America's handgun industry. I know stocks are down this month on lower sales, but don't be sad. It's only 3 months until school starts. I love the way they come around after a while. Neural, there's such a thing as being too ready for Hillary. Neural, everyone must join me in congratulating Taylor Swift and Tom Hiddleston on their newfound romantic... What's that? It's over. Sorry. Neural, now that we're all finally trying to respect Indians properly, presidents have to stop putting on that headdress. It doesn't say, I respect America's First Nations. It says, I slept with the village people. Obama looked ridiculous in it. Coolidge looked ridiculous. So did FDR and Nixon and, of course, Trump. Neural, I don't know what Adobe Flash Player really is, but after all these years, if it still needs to be updated this often, it sucks. Neural, the makers of Tiny House World, Tiny House Hunting, Tiny House Builders, and Tiny House Nation have to get together with the producers of The Biggest Loser and make a show called Does This House Make Me Look Fat? I love the booing into applause. Fuck you. Oh, you're right. Okay. Neural, now that Japan is closing the last factory on Earth that makes VCRs, we could stop calling sex tapes. And millennials have to stop pretending that vinyl is the only way to listen to music and start pretending that VHS is the only way to watch a movie. Oh, the warmth, the depth, the subtle grades of tone. I'm telling you, brah, you haven't seen Crocodile Dundee until you've seen it on VHS. Neural, someone has to tell Bombay night frogs, which have been observed mating in a position called the dorsal straddle, where the male ejaculates on the female's back and she lets the sperm run down her back to fertilize her eggs, that they've been watching too much porn. Neural, the Japanese Pokemon Go fans who claim they can make their Pokemon eggs hatch faster by rubbing a vibrator on their phone have to admit, A, it doesn't work, and B, your life isn't turning out the way you hope. Neural, anyone sending around that viral water birth video and going on about how beautiful it is also has to watch the video taken the next morning when the pool guy arrives. And finally, new rule, from now until Election Day, everything else, every issue, every fight, every cause, has to take a backseat to defeating Trump. He's like an infection. You don't fool around with it. Look, we all have our issues that are important to us. And so just to lead by example, let me say that I will take my own close to the heart pet cause, pot legalization, off the table. And you know me, I have seeds in my urine. But if you know that, but if someone told me that pushing for pot might cost Hillary Ohio until November 8th, I'm just going to shut the fuck up about it. And And finally, new rule, both candidates must sign a pledge that whoever loses the election in November, whether it's Hillary or whether it's Orange Hitler, I play it fair and balanced, the loser has to congratulate the winner and concede graciously. Why? Because civility is nearly dead in this country, and we need to return to some basic level of bipartisan decency and respect for our opponents. Otherwise, we're going to wind up being governed by those good-for-nothing assholes on the other side. You see, because I just... could be. New rule, someone has to tell the Australian woman who spent $500 on surgery for her goldfish that there's a reason it looks good as new. It is new. Lady, there's no such thing as goldfish surgery. You should have realized that when you were in the waiting room and you heard this. New rule, Parisians must stop thinking they're so enlightened now that Paris has approved a clothing-free zone within its city limits. Here in America, hundreds of cities already have clothing-free zones. They're called Walmarts. New rule, Taco Bell doesn't need a makeover to honor its Mexican heritage. I don't go to Taco Bell for ambiance. I go because it's the only place I can get a colonic for $1.
Oh, my goodness.
And finally, new rule, presidential debates need some new rules. Starting with, each candidate gets 3 times in the debate when they can call, let's go to the videotape.
Good idea.
So that when this happens...
But he also went after a disabled reporter, mocked and mimicked him on national television.
She can throw the red flag in his orange face and say, wrong, tape, please.
I don't know what I said. I don't remember.
Maybe if people could actually see Trump saying one thing a second after he claimed the opposite, they'd stop pretending there's really any other choice in this election, Rick, than to vote for Hillary Clinton. Okay. And finally, new rule here on Inauguration Day, in the interest of new beginnings, liberals have to stop calling Trump voters rubes and simpletons and instead reach out and feel their pain. The pain they insist we didn't see. And there is ample evidence for that pain. Did you know that of the 14 states with the highest number of painkiller prescriptions per person, they all went for Trump? Trump won 80% of the states that have the biggest heroin problem. And the counties that he won in Ohio and Pennsylvania that went for Obama last time are the ones that are racked by opiate abuse. So let's stop calling Trump voters idiots and fools and call them what they are. Fucking drug addicts. You know, in 2016, conservatives won the White House, both houses of Congress, and almost 2/3 of governorships and state legislatures. Whereas liberals, on the other hand, caught Steve Martin calling Carrie Fisher beautiful in a tweet and made him take it down. I'm not making that up. That really happened. Here's Steve's offensive tweet. When I was a young man, Carrie Fisher was the most beautiful creature I'd ever seen. She turned out to be witty and bright as well. How could you, Steve? We thought we knew you, but this? You noted her appearance first, and then that she was witty and bright. You're a monster! Liberals do this all the time. They get offended for people who themselves would not be offended. You know that whole controversy about the name Washington Redskins? They did a survey. 9 out of 10 actual Indians don't give a shit. New rule, Jane Allen, the Georgia grade school teacher who was fired after posting on Facebook that Michelle Obama is a, quote, gorilla who needs a makeover, needs to buy a mirror. I'm sure they sell them at the 99-cent store where she bought that dress. And the hacksaw she used to cut her hair. I know it's not nice to make fun of someone's looks. I'm just trying to teach Jane Allen a lesson. Besides, she's really ugly. Newell, I don't want to hear anything about whites being a superior race until one white person at a wedding learns the words to Earth, Wind, and Fire, September. You've had 40 years to get this. 40 years where it's been played at every white people wedding, birthday, convention, reunion, office party, Christmas party, real estate seminar, and hunting accident memorial. And here's what your Uncle Doug retained. Do you remember? Na, 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 na. 3 words in 40 years. That's why we don't win anymore. Well, as long as we're getting rid of obsolete technology like coal, let's also get rid of the handkerchief. I mean, come on, it's gross. We have Kleenex now. Why do you want to have snot in your pocket? And while we're on the topic, the hanky's elitist cousin, the pocket square, can also take a hike. This doesn't say I'm a man of style and elegance. It says I don't have the guts to be a transvestite.
I was just going to say...
New rule, the Gucci company should merge with Audi and the Olympics and form a doodle of pubic hair. When you think fine Italian handbags, luxury automobiles, and track and field, think a doodle of pubic hair. And if you didn't think that was funny now, trust me, when marijuana is legal next week, you're going to think it's hilarious. New rule, stop saying it's just a tabloid rumor that Camilla Parker Bowles' gas is so bad they nicknamed her the Queen of Farts. And Charles has banished her from Highgrove House. 1, I want to believe it. And 2, I want England to take us back. New rule, you can wear your faith on your sleeve all you like, but you're not a true Christian until you've bought the Jesus Christ cheese grater. That's right, it's real, because as I've always said, what better way to express your reverence for the Lord than by forcing mozzarella through his face? New rule, now that American Airlines has added a new class below economy, basic economy, that doesn't allow carry-ons or choosing your seat or anything, and they have to add a class below basic economy called fuck you. No food, no drinks, no entertainment. The restroom is a bucket in the corner. And in case of an emergency, instead of an oxygen mask, a little sign drops down that says, fuck you. New rule, boarding groups C and D have to back the hell off. Oh, everyone knows what you're doing, boarding groups C and D. You're trying to infiltrate boarding groups A and B until the gate agent says screw it and accepts any old boarding pass. Well, not on my watch. This is an American airport, not a Japanese subway. New rule, the Indian... Well, you'll hate this one, too. New rule, the Indian woman who recently gave birth to a 15-pound baby can be sued for...
I think they were just visualizing
right now.
visualizing childbirth, I guess.
can be sued for damages by her vagina. If you deliver 15 pounds of anything, you're not a mom, you're a UPS truck. Asked what the baby's gender was, doctor said, we're still poking around. Doesn't it feel better to just let go? Just let go. New rule, someone must tell Donald Trump he met with the wrong Oz. Oh, I already did this joke. Oh, no, I didn't. Oh, no, go back. Sorry. He doesn't need a doctor. He needs a brain. Oh, yeah, we did that.
You did that joke.
Yeah, fuck that.
It's good, though.
Next joke.
Still true.
Sorry, we're a little rusty. New rule, whoever cropped this photo deserves the Congressional Medal of Honor. Because my eyes have seen a lot of things. But if this is Donald Trump lovingly cupping Bill Clinton's scrotum while Bill pats him on the back, the libertarians are right. We need a third party. And finally, new rule, next time Apple wants to do something truly innovative and really think different, they should try not releasing a new phone. Because somebody has to teach Americans that we don't always have to have something newer, better every year. Or in the case of our upside-down economic system, every quarter. The only people who really need you to get a new phone every year are the shareholders. But just because they need to sell it so they can jerk off the stock price doesn't mean you have to stand in that nerd line and buy it. You're not early adapting. In fact, quite the opposite. You're taking too long to catch on. And finally, new rule, and this one's for Trump voters. If you think you hate the establishment now, wait until he wins. And the Trump surrogates, that basket of inexplicables he sends out every day to speak for him, become the establishment. Wait until Steve Cortez and Katrina Pearson and Chris Christie and Omarosa are trundling down the corridors of power, bumping into the walls. We're thinking of giving these people the reins of power. I wouldn't put them on the bus without asking the driver to make sure they don't miss their stop. And finally, new rule in the next debate, when Donald Trump starts going on about how everything in this country is a total disaster, Hillary must lean into the mic and say, wrong. And finally, new rule, now that college grads are decorating their mortarboards with messages like, thanks, Mom and Dad, and proud of my BS. Parents of graduates must also wear mortarboards so they can send messages back to their kids. Like, your old room is now an Airbnb. Empty nesters have the best sex. And hope you like ramen. Finally, new rule, since this year's presidential race features both an unabashed socialist and a bona fide capitalist pig, someone needs to explain to the free market solves everything crowd that when it comes to socialism, you're soaking in it. Marco Rubio says, if you want to live in a socialist country, why not move to a socialist country? Oh, you mean like Florida, where everyone's on Social Security? Never mind. And finally, new rule, everyone has to admit that even though Bernie Sanders didn't win the nomination, he's already won the future. Now, last week in this space, I talked about how socialism was something America needs more of to curtail capitalism, because the profit motive creates horrible incentives like keeping people sick, putting too many of them in jail, always being at war, and treating a woman touching Donald Trump's hair as breaking news. But let's not romanticize socialism the way conservatives romanticize capitalism. These are economic systems, not your first kiss.
This is creepy.
New rule, if you want people to take you seriously, lose the basketball net trash can in your office. It doesn't say I'm fun and sporty. It says, so many of my ideas are shit, I've made a game of it. And finally, new rule, since President Obama is constantly being accused of going on an apology tour, he should just go on one. For two reasons. It will drive Republicans nuts, especially if he wears the turban. And more importantly, to a world that has been trembling over the prospect of us electing Donald Trump, it would be a great way to send the message, America, we're back on our meds.
Welcome back to Harbor. With 2 weeks to go before the presidential election, Bill Maher is front and center talking politics, religion, and everything else having to do with Decision 2008. You can catch him live every Friday night at 11 p.m. Eastern on HBO's Real Time with Bill Maher and in theaters in his new movie, Religulous. Hard to pronounce that, Bill. How do you pronounce that? Welcome back to Harbor. How do you pronounce the name of your movie?
It's Religulous. It's like you're saying religion and then you go to ridiculous. For obvious reasons.
Well, speaking of which, let's take a look at a little favorite of ours now from last Friday. This is Minnesota Congresswoman Michelle Bachmann and what she had to say about her colleagues on Capitol Hill. So this is a character issue. You believe that Barack Obama you're suspicious because of this relationship, may have anti-American views. Otherwise, it's probably irrelevant to this discussion. So
Absolutely.
You believe so you believe that Barack Obama may have anti-American views?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm very concerned that he may have anti-American views. That's what the American people are concerned about. That's why they want to know what his answers are. That's why Joe the plumber has figured so highly in the last few days.
Okay.
Because Joe the plumber, what I would say is that the news media should do a penetrating expose and take a look. I wish they would. I wish the American media would take a great look at the views of the people in Congress and find out, are they pro-America or anti-America? I think people would love to see an expose like that.
Hey, Bill, are you willing to take up your burden on that and conduct a penetrating investigation of the anti-American views on the other side of the aisle?
Chris, I love it when you give dumb people just enough rope to hang themselves. And I must say, I had not heard of this congressperson before this, but I did see your show. I saw her do this, and I thought, oh, that's going to be an issue. But what I've heard about her is...
Can I cue you up another one? Here's something fresh from today, fresh from the world of 2008 politics. This is the vice presidential nominee of the Republican Party talking about her notion of what the vice presidency holds for her.
A vice president has a really great job because not only are they there to support the president's agenda, they're like the team member, the teammate to that president, but also they're in charge of the United States Senate. So if they want to, they can really get in there with the senators and make a lot of good policy changes that will make life better.
Wow. I heard this begin during the debate when her notion of the vice presidency is she's going to run the U.S. Senate. I thought it was a formality to just break ties and sit up there. She says she's going to basically be in charge of the Senate. She's going to get through good policy. She's going to get in there and work. I guess she has to take a look at the Constitution before she, at least takes office.
Well, that would involve reading, Chris. I wouldn't hold your breath on that. I was just going to say, before you showed the second clip, that what I've been hearing about this congresswoman in Minnesota is that she's the only person in public office these days who's actually dumber than Palin. But I don't know. After I heard that clip that you just showed me, that's a toss-up. That's a real Beavis and Butthead we've got there. But, you know, I don't know how we got to... Yes, sir?
I'm just wondering about this rift that's been going on the last couple of days. Maybe it's because of the poll numbers showing like a 14-point spread now for Barack. But in the last couple of weeks, he's a celebrity. He consorts with terrorists. He's a socialist. He's an anti-American. Today, Mel Martinez, he's a communist. They hate America, the liberals. It's getting hotter and hotter. At this rate, 2 weeks from now, I don't know what the accusations are going to be.
But this is old-time Republican boilerplate that we've lived with for the longest time. It's just getting nastier because these are the people, this is the old guard who fears that their claw that's on the lever of power is finally being pried off. So they do what Republicans in this era always do. If you say something that's a valid criticism of some Republican policy, they go right to turning it around to, no, you're attacking something noble that's associated with that policy. If you say that George Bush avoided Vietnam, you're denigrating the Guard. If you say Sarah Palin is not qualified to be holding high office, well, then somehow you're attacking small-town America. And so it's just gotten ratcheted up to this level where somehow Barack Obama is a socialist and a communist. I don't even know where they're getting it. They're just pulling out of Joe the plumber's crack.
Yeah, let me go to your line of his what? His what?
Well, you know plumbers, Chris. I don't want to have to spell it out for you.
Okay, I don't know. Let me. Here's a quote from Governor Palin. More food for thought. Quote: "Faith and God in general has been mocked through this campaign, and that breaks my heart." You know, except for that comment made up there on Russian Hill or Nob Hill, wherever it was, back several months ago when Barack Obama was trying to explain to the rich people why some middle-class people wouldn't vote for him besides race. I haven't heard a lot of reference derogatory of religion at all in this campaign. I don't know what she's talking about.
I think she's talking about me, Chris. I'm the only one who does it. So, you know, I'm flattered. Thank you for listening, Governor. But yeah, I don't understand that. And this is not the first time we've heard this line of reasoning, if you will. The Christians who are 80% of this country, at least, who control everything, they have this persecution complex. I don't know where they got that from. But it's ridiculous in 21st century America to have a persecution complex when you're all powerful. So I don't know what she's talking about. I'm the only one mocking, and I'm doing it in a very funny way. Chris, Religulous, doing very well in theaters now. If you've seen it, see it again.
What did you make of General Powell's, I thought, bold statement in defense of religious diversity? I know you're an agnostic, a self-proclaimed one. And many people, not many people, some people are in this country, obviously, and almost everybody has some sort of question about their faith. They think about their faith. They wonder about it. They have moments of doubt. Of course, people do. But here he was doing something that seemed to be not necessary, but maybe we know it is. He said, what's this about calling Barack Obama a Muslim, which he isn't? He's a lifelong Christian. But if he were, if a kid were 7 years old who were Muslim, and then he talked about the soldier who died because he wanted to defend his country, America, against what those people did on 9/11, and he did die in Iraq for his country. The mother was at the graveyard, her head on the tombstone. I thought that was interesting that a guy of his power and popularity risked everything to come out and say, yeah, you know what? It's okay to be from a real minority religion in this country. It's not just about lies told about Barack Obama. It's about when it's true that somebody has a minority religion. So what? Move on.
Well, he could say that. He's not running for anything. But as you and I both well know, even though we pretend that there is no religious test in this country, of course there's a religious test in this country. You better be very religious, you better be Christian, and you better profess your faith at every turn, or else you have no chance of getting anybody's nomination for president. I mean, Barack Obama talks a lot about his faith, and he's supposedly the party that's not that totally into religion. But I hear him do it all the time, and when I hear him do that, all I can think is, I hope he's lying. I hope he's just pretending. I hope we finally have a secular president who's not going to run a faith-based administration. Because when you're faith-based, I'm sorry, it warps your thinking. No offense.
Okay. Well, maybe there is offense. Bill Maher, one of the funniest guys I know, and sometimes you're too irreverent even for me. But thank you, Bill Maher. Real Time with Bill Maher airs Friday nights at 11 p.m., but you can invite me on, that's okay, on HBO. And his new movie is called Religulous.
Bill Maher has always been politically incorrect. After ABC canceled the show of that very name a few years back, he bounced back with an HBO program called Real Time, where his sometimes caustic humor and unabashed liberal commentary are pleasing his fans and ticking off his detractors.
Miss California says that her answer in a contest opposing gay marriage and favoring opposite marriage is what cost her her crown. Well, let's see. She's extremely Christian, she's kind of hot, and she's dumb. Looks like the Republicans have a new vice presidential candidate.
In taking the program to Los Angeles this past week, I dropped by the studio where Real Time is aired. And we're here in Television City with Bill Maher. Thanks very much for letting us stop by and sit in these directors' chairs.
Literally Television City.
Literally.
People may think you were just referring to L.A. in general, but this is a compound called Television City.
You have feasted for a long time on George Bush and Dick Cheney. We're in a new era now. On your program a while back, you told a joke about President Obama.
Hey, you know who's superstitious about Friday the 13th? Republicans. They say the country is having bad luck because we let a black cat in the White House.
Remember the audience reaction?
Yeah, well, they boo me a lot when I talk about Obama.
Why is that? What does that tell you?
It tells me that we get a very super sensitive liberal audience. You know, I mean, this is one reason I always have trouble doing charity events. I'm all for charity, but the events, you know, it's always that limousine liberal crowd that just has their finger on the politically correct button. You know, they're just ready to like, ooh.
Say the wrong thing, it's like,
yeah, I mean, that's what bugs me the most about liberals, is that they object before they even know what they're objecting to.
Are these your people, Bill?
No, not when they do that. I'm much more of a, you know, I'm a free speech person, and I would say, especially on campuses in the last 10 or 15 years, the repression of speech has come more from the left.
But you were quoted as saying Obama is the new God, meaning that he's difficult to make fun of, that people are shying away?
I think I said he was chocolate Jesus.
But are comedians treading lightly with this president?
Oh, we have to stop asking that question.
Well, give me a good answer.
I've been answering this question. Media has to stop asking whether comedians can deal with
I don't see Leno and Letterman and Jon Stewart skewering him.
Well, watch my show.
Okay.
I do, and that's why I get booed.
And you're willing to take those boos?
Absolutely. Unless you're getting booed sometimes, you're not saying anything. You're just, you know, confirming what your audience already believes, and that's not really helping.
So you want to challenge people, and those boos are a badge of honor. Let's talk about the media coverage of some things that have been in the news. Swine flu. I thought millions of people were supposed to be dead by now. What happened?
I never bought it. When it first came out, I remember we said, you know, this is the latest non-event that the media is going to hype. You know, Jimmy Breslin said a great thing once about television. He said, the message of television is stay home and watch more television. Swine flu is very good for CNN, wasn't it?
And the other cable network.
Yeah, everything.
And did they scare the hell out of people unnecessarily?
Absolutely. And, you know, there's a bigger problem, which is that people don't really, I think, in this country understand anything about health. I think the medical community is corrupt and ill-informed, and I don't think people understand that this is a flu. All flus come from animals. They come from birds. They come from pigs. And, you know, the regular flu, which has a much worse publicist than swine flu, apparently, as you know, kills, you know, tens of thousands every year.
It doesn't get much press.
Doesn't get much press. And, what are you, Kramer?
I'm trying to get in the mood here. All right, let me ask.
You know, the answer is to have a strong immune system, but that would involve eating right and, you know, adjusting your lifestyle.
Boring.
Yeah.
All right. Miss California, Carrie Prejean, you've had some fun with her. She, of course, gave that answer opposing gay marriage.